is supposed to be an independent institution. What we are required to do as members of parliament is to prove only one ground. The rest of them may fall or may succeed. But I can assure you, out of the 11 grounds, there is cogent evidence that the deputy president has committed acts inconsistent with his office. Acts which in themselves warrant this House to impeach him today as we go to the vote. As I conclude, I urge the House, let us look at the bigger picture, which is the bigger picture of Kenya as a country. What we are doing is not to try and appease one person. We are trying to do this so that the country is saved. And we have always asked the question, the second in command who does not work with the first in command and his team, of what use would that person be to the country? With those very many remarks, I do beg to support this motion. Thank you.
Mishimbogo. Give her the mic.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, nasimama hapa kuunga mkono hoja hii ya kumng'atua mamlakani naibu wa rais Bwana Rigathi Gachagua. Na naunga mkono kwa sababu katiba yetu kifungu 159 imetupatia sababu mwafaka za kuweza kumng'atua naibu wa rais. Na sababu ya kwanza imezungumzia kukeuka katiba. Na nikiangalia Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua amekeuka katiba, haswa nikiangalia kipengele cha 10 ambacho kinazungumzia maadili ya kitaifa. Maadili ya kitaifa ikiwemo umoja, ikiwemo demokrasia, ikiwemo usawa. Mara nyingi sana amezungumzia mambo ya kwamba nchi yetu ni kama kampuni na ni ya washikadau. Na amesema ya kwamba washikadau hawa ni wale ambao tu wamepiga kura katika serikali ya Kenya Kwanza. Hivyo basi kukiuka maadili katika kifungu cha 10, kwa sababu tunajua Wakenya wote wanalipa ushuru na Wakenya wote wana haki sawia, wale waliopiga kura kwa serikali na wale ambao pia walikuwa katika upande ule mwingine, kwa sababu ni demokrasia. Unaweza kuwa upande wa serikali na unaweza kuwa upande wa upinzani. Vile vile pia tunaona katika kifungu 147 kinasema ya kwamba yeye atakuwa ni msaidizi mkuu wa rais katika serikali, na msaidizi mkuu pia atakuwa ni naibu katika zile kazi ambazo rais anazifanya. Lakini je, vitendo vyake vimeonyesha mambo hayo? Vitendo vimeonyesha ya kwamba yeye si msaidizi. Kuna wakati ule wa Gen Z, wakati rais ametoa hotuba hapa Nairobi ya kutoa mwelekeo wa kitaifa na jambo lile, yeye alikuwa Mombasa akitoa hotuba ambayo ilikuwa inazungumza tofauti na ile hotuba ya rais. Na hapo pia akatia fitina katika taasisi zetu za kiserikali na kumlaumu Bwana Nurdin Haji. Kwa hivyo imeonyesha ya kwamba yeye ni kama anachukua nafasi ile ya rais, hachukui ile nafasi ya kwamba yeye ni msaidizi. Vile vile pia tumeona ya kwamba naibu wa rais amekiuka katiba na kuwa amezungumzia utovu wa nidhamu kwa hali ya juu. Ile Kiingereza tunasema gross misconduct. Kwa mfano, aliita mmoja wetu Mheshimiwa Jematia na kumuita malaya. Unapoita mwanamke yoyote malaya, umeita wamama wote wa Kenya malaya. Sisi si malaya, sisi ni kina mama na sisi ni viongozi. Hatuwezi tukakubali naibu wa rais kutuita malaya. Akarudi akasema hawa mama wa Mount Kenya ambao wako pamoja na mimi, hawa ni wamama, wote ni wamama wa rais, hawa ni wamama wake. Alikuwa anamaanisha nini? Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua, huna heshima kwa kina mama wa taifa hili la Kenya. Vile vile katika huo utovu wa nidhamu tunaona sehemu ya Nyandarua alinunua shamba ambalo kina mama walikuwa wamelima mahindi, wamelima viazi, wamelima zile mushiri. Alimuweka pale MCA na wakavuruga hiyo chakula yote. Angekuwa yeye ana hekima kama kiongozi, angeacha vikue, watu wavune, alafu achukue hilo shamba. Lakini ni kwamba hana nidhamu na wala hana kufikiria Wakenya kama naibu wa rais, na wala hana ubinadamu. Vile vile pia sababu nyingine inakuwa ya kwamba ukikosa
Need hosting that's speedy and simple to set up? Our security plan options.
What?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I was just wondering if after speaking to the public participation that I could also just make my contribution.
You have 15 minutes within which you have to speak to all those.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'll try. Mr. Speaker, earlier on in the morning, I had tabled before the House. I am, is it vertically challenged?
You are loud enough. Go on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was indicating that earlier in the morning I had presented a report of a public participation on the proposed removal from office by impeachment of His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, this is following the notice of a special motion by Honorable Mwengi Mutuse and in line with Article 1182 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, consequently, the House Business Committee approved a public participation program across all 290 constituencies, and I present on behalf of the House Business Committee. Mr. Speaker, I'll speak to the issue of the legal framework of public participation. And Mr. Speaker, Article 10.2 of the Constitution provides for the participation of the people as one of the national values and principles of governance. Mr. Speaker, Article 118 of the Constitution requires Parliament to ensure public access and participation of the people in its affairs. I will not go to the details, and you can read it for ourselves because of time. Mr. Speaker, I wish to note on my own behalf that in quasi-judicial proceedings like this, public participation is not really necessary, even though the courts are pronounced that they are. In my view, they are not actually necessary in a quasi-judicial processes like this, because, Mr. Speaker, it's almost like saying that the judiciary needs public participation in making their decision. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I also want to speak to the issue of timelines. And, Mr. Speaker, Parliament has spoken very clearly on the issue of timelines under Standing Order 64.2. And in summary, Mr. Speaker, I would want to say, if you read the standing order, that there are very strict timelines for a process or a motion like this. And, Mr. Speaker, in setting the period, the National Assembly was guided by the need to preserve the overarching constitutional principle of acting without unreasonable delay. The special motion for removal from office by impeachment of the Deputy President was therefore processed in accordance with the timeline set out under Standing Order 64. Mr. Speaker, in buttressing the necessity for expedited consideration of special motions, previous speakers of the National Assembly of Kenya expressed themselves on the question of timelines for considering special motions by the House when the special motions were filed proposing the removal by impeachment of the then cabinet secretaries, Honorable Anne Waiguru, Honorable James Macharia, Honorable Kaimenyi, and more recently, Honorable Mithika Linturi. In all the foregoing instances, the Speaker emphasized the need to dispose of a special motion as soon as is practicable to remove the anxiety of hangman's noose from the neck of a state officer proposed for impeachment. Mr. Speaker, you have seen the level of anxiety that the Deputy President has undergone, and indeed when he was actually giving the press statement yesterday, he was almost in tears. And that is why the House hastens the process so that the emotional turmoil is lessened having gone through this process, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Clerk of the National Assembly published advertisements on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of October and invited written submissions via hand delivery, post, or email until the 5th of October 2024. Mr. Speaker, all these were also advertised on the 4th of October and extended to the 5th in each constituency. To assist in this exercise, a public view template was made available to the public in both English and Kiswahili to guide submissions. On the 3rd and 4th of October 2024, 40,000 copies of the public view template were also circulated as newspaper pullouts. This template was designated to provide clarity and precision in responses, whether for or against the motion. Number 2, to supplement other means of public input. And 3, to ensure both qualitative and quantitative feedback was captured, which is actually as has been directed by the courts in the past. Mr. Speaker, I just want to indicate that many means were used, including radio, TVs, and other means to publicize this process, including Twitter, or formerly, currently X, or formerly Twitter, and Facebook pages. Mr. Speaker, the public was invited to submit views either in support or in opposition of the special motion or offer other views. Mr. Speaker, I wish to laud Kenyans for their growing consciousness on their civic rights and duties. Mr. Speaker, people participated in various ways, as was witnessed both on electronic and social media, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, many Kenyans who are participated very expressively. Mr. Speaker, I think many of us saw people expressing their views in many ways, some of which I will explain later. However, Mr. Speaker, by the nature of newsmaking, we saw the areas where the views were expressive, but much less in the areas where the views were not that expressive. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the report, and I want to download the parliamentary team, they have even captured photos of members of the public giving their views in constituencies very peacefully. But Mr. Speaker, as I want to repeat, that by the very nature of newsmaking, what we will see are the dramatic scenes. And those we saw, I don't think it is shame as such, it's their right and they can share. Mr. Speaker, I wish to indicate I wish to report that based on all that, over 200,000 responses were received, of which 65.1% supported the motion, while 33.81% opposed the motion, and 1.09% offered neutral or other alternative views. Mr. Speaker, some of the members in contributing have actually alluded to some of those alternative views. I've heard the Speaker right before me talking about the issue that Kenya has very many pressing issues. Mr. Speaker, indeed it is true, Kenya has many pressing issues, And as a House, we are already seized of those issues and are indeed already dealing with some of those issues. One of those issues that the Parliament has raised is the issue of education, the education system, and we have called the CS for Education more than 2 times to deal with that issue. Again, on the health issue, we have also invited the CS for Health amongst other officials. So indeed the House can chew and walk at the same time. Mr. Speaker, when a motion is brought of this magnitude, Parliament, by its own standing orders, must stop everything else and give priority to this motion. And that is why Parliament stopped all its business on Thursday and focused on this, and all members of Parliament went to their constituencies to deal with this issue. Mr. Speaker, I wish to indicate that given that this is a very special public participation process, the first of its kind, Mr. Speaker, since the Constitution was promulgated, there were some challenges, but which did not affect the overall product of public participation. Mr. Speaker, some of those challenges were as follows. Mr. Speaker, there was political interference at public forums such as Bomas of Kenya and Murang'a. Mr. Speaker, there was violent disruptions in areas like Olkalau, Kipipiri, and Nyeri Town. Mr. Speaker, there was incomplete or unclear submission, including forms without identifying information or contradictory responses. Mr. Speaker, there was low turnout in some constituencies due to insecurity, such as in Bura. Mr. Speaker, public expectation for monetary compensation for participation was also experienced. Mr. Speaker, there was late submission of forms and memorandum in some instances. There were threats of violence towards officers and inappropriate language in some email submissions. And Mr. Speaker, there was pressure from some constituencies such as Olkalau and Kipipiri for officers to declare results prematurely. On the whole, Mr. Speaker, most places in the country went on uninterrupted. And the results that I just indicated to you, Mr. Speaker, are based on that. Mr. Speaker, because of time and I would like other members to speak, I would want to invite members to look at the report that has been tabled by the House Business Committee. Mr. Speaker, I'll just speak very briefly on my own account. Mr. Speaker, I wish to indicate on my own account as a member of Suba North constituency that what we are going through post-2010 constitution, I want to agree with the honorable member that has spoken and said that it's a very important process, because indeed it is. Mr. Speaker, it is a defining moment constitutionally and a first of its kind since 2010. It is both a legal and a political process. Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court in the Sonko case confirmed that impeachment is not just about civil liability or criminal culpability, but it's about accountability, political governance, as well as policy and political responsibility. Mr. Speaker, I'll speak very briefly to that in the end, but I want to speak to the issue of grounds. I'll be very brief, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are 3 grounds that have been given under Article 150 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak to the issue, the 3rd ground, which is gross misconduct. Mr. Speaker, I have actually looked at the Constitution and there is no definition of gross misconduct. I have looked at our laws and there is no definition of gross misconduct. Mr. Speaker, Black's Law Dictionary defines gross misconduct as a dereliction of duty, unlawful or improper behavior. Mr. Speaker, on that account alone, virtually every ground that has been stipulated here would amount to gross misconduct. Mr. Speaker, speaking as a governance expert, perhaps it's one of the areas we may want to change in future in the Constitution. Because I was saddened when Nancy Baraza was removed from office for just touching somebody's nose only. Even pinching, yeah, touching somebody's nose. So, Mr. Speaker, what I would like to say, Mr. Speaker, is based on these grounds, it is easy to impeach.
Stop. Stop. Fanya kwa stop. Sio store hii, ni store ya nje sasa. Ile pia ni store iko na vitu za kampuni. Ni room nani anaishi hapo ndani? Then ni nyumba ya Musa. Then inakuwa ni nyumba ya Musa. What the heck?
As a woman leader, I want to correct that. Nancy Baraza served this country faithfully. So let us correct the Hansard. Thank you.
Go on.
Honorable Speaker, I can proceed.
Thanks, Gladys.
Go on.
Yes, I am. Okay. Honorable Speaker, thank you very much. And again, before I proceed to support this motion, allow me to clarify just one issue. I have been accused by the Deputy President of bias, indicating that I cannot preside over this impeachment proceedings because I am biased. I want to confirm that when Okay, thank you. I want to confirm that I'm not biased at all. When I made the statements that I did make, I made them as Member of Parliament for Uasin Gishu County and not as a Deputy Speaker sitting on the Speaker's chair. You can only accuse me of bias if I make those statements from the Speaker's chair. I am first a Member of Parliament before I am Deputy Speaker. If the law contemplated a situation where I am gagged as Deputy Speaker, I would have been expected then by that law to resign like the substantive Speaker does in that case. And therefore now I want to proceed to go on to support the motion, speaking as an ordinary member of Uasin Gishu County and not as Deputy Speaker. I have a few points to point out. The Deputy President has been engaged in various conducts that meet the threshold for impeachment. One, on numerous occasions, he has insisted that Kenya is a company of shares, and this is contrary to the Constitution, Article 10, and also our national values. I also want to bring attention of the House that he has contravened his oath of allegiance. When he took his oath of allegiance, he says, in full realization of the high calling, I assume as Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, I swear and affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Republic of Kenya. The oath of allegiance does not mention Murima, it does not mention Mount Kenya. He bears allegiance to the Republic of Kenya, not to his wife and not to his sons. So he has gone against his oath of allegiance. I also want to go on to refer to the press conference that the Deputy President held in Mombasa on the 25th of June, 2024. In that particular press statement, he distanced himself from the Finance Bill 2024. As a member of Cabinet, in his position as Deputy President, he is collectively responsible for all the decisions that are made in Cabinet, and therefore, in distancing himself, he violated Article 153 of the Constitution. The Finance Bill, as we know, is the overarching legislative document that underpins the revenue-raising measures for the executive in order to achieve its programs. If the Deputy President did not agree with the decision of Cabinet on the Finance Bill, he ought to have held his peace and his tongue or resigned as a member of the Cabinet. There is no two ways about it. And furthermore, by the mere fact of holding a presser at a time when the country was in crisis, when the President has addressed the nation, he went on to have his own one-man show of a presser. That is the greatest definition of gross misconduct. It is pure insubordination. No one can do that. It is unthinkable for a principal assistant to contradict the principal. If you want to contradict the principal, you resign your position and go and contradict them from outside. Thirdly, the Deputy President also distanced himself from the activities of the Nairobi Rivers Commission and claims that the activities were undertaken contrary to the law. The work of the commission was again endorsed by Cabinet. The government followed laid down laws regarding eviction and resettlement of members of the public. The Deputy President knows that this has been a crisis in this country and in contravention of the laws by having people living by the riparian zone. And in this year, people had actually died. And in order to prevent further deaths in future, Cabinet in its wisdom decided to relocate the members of the public. And again, he again failed to take collective responsibility with Cabinet, did not resign, but went on to countermand the decisions that had been made in Cabinet. Furthermore, he has taken an oath of secrecy and therefore cannot publicly divulge what was decided in Cabinet. Again, there he has contravened the law. 4, During the press conference in Mombasa on the 25th of June 2024, the Deputy President accused the Director General of NIS of providing faulty intelligence and firing some senior officers. As a state officer, and most importantly, as a member of the National Security Council, under Article 240, the members of the National Security Council at Clause 2B, the Deputy President is a member. He then cannot discuss intelligence briefs that come to his knowledge during the proceedings of the National Security Council. Again, with that, he has gone against the Official Secrets Act and his oath of secrecy. And even if he had any reservations, he has opportunity as a member of the National Security Council to raise it at the Security Council proceedings and even to raise it to the President in person, but not to come as if he's an ordinary citizen who is in the opposition and then speak about it in public. That is wrong. In fact, it is juvenile. It reveals him as a person who is unhinged and cannot control their tongue.